everybody, I hope you're doing well. In today's episode, we explore a lot of topics, ranging from esoterica, content creation, technology, and, well, I can't say anything else because it'll spoil the story. This is the fifth of the all-original tales set to release in my new book, Volume 2. If you haven't done so already, be sure to check out the other books I've released in audio form on YouTube. Just click on my channel and explore the videos I've already uploaded. There's a lot of good short story, sci-fi, and horror content, and I hope you find some favorites. Now, without further ado, let's listen to The Threshold.
The Threshold by Mike Young. Unboxing. And now for the unboxing, Clarissa said, sliding the package into the camera frame. The box was larger than expected, sturdy, sealed tight, and wrapped in the glossy branding of 3D eyes. She turned it slowly for the viewers, the ring light glinting off its surface. I thought it would be smaller, she admitted, given the size of the little creatures inside. Clarissa's aesthetic always made an impression before she even spoke. Black tank top, layered necklaces, a silver-threaded braid woven into her dark hair. She didn't need to call herself goth. The style spoke fluently on her behalf. Traditional mothers would look at her and sigh. She could be so pretty if she just tried to look normal. Clarissa had zero interest in normal. Her channel was known for its focus on the esoteric, tarot readings, occult commentary, left-hand path philosophy. But every so often, she broke up the mysticism with product unboxings. Today was episode 587. She placed the box on her altar table and angled the camera down. A bone-handled knife, whose origins she had once recounted in an episode left intentionally ambiguous, made quick work of the seal tape. Layer by layer, she removed the packaging, ice packs, stabilizing cardboard, and then the contents themselves. This, she said, lifting a clear pouch, is the E-Monkeys colony. 25 of them. They're in stasis right now, kind of like cryosleep. Once we introduce them to water and power the disc, they wake up. Next item, Nano Nanas, their food source. The bag's cartoonish banana patterns clashed hilariously with the solemnity of her altar. Then, the seeds. Then, the building substrate, small blue stones that shimmered faintly. Finally, she picked up the disc. Rose gold, mirror bright, the name of monkeys etched in deep scarlet. "This is the part that makes the magic happen," she said softly. The metal gleamed like something alive. She held the disc still in her palm, letting the camera linger. "I'll get everything set up later," she said, returning to her usual sign-off tone. "Once I've got it figured out, you guys will be the first to know." Metal began playing as the screen faded to black.
Product of the year. E-Monkeys are finally here. 3D Eyes has created the must-have gift of the season. All you need is a 3D Eyes forehead socket and a fishbowl or aquarium, and you're set. Simply add your E-Monkeys to the water and insert the disc into your 3D Eyes socket to begin. The tutorial will walk you through everything. Before you know it, you'll be exploring a world of wonders. Your very own little creatures will live their lives building families and communities, all under your watchful first-person eye. You will guide them to greatness. How it works. The disc will allow you to interface with the E-Monkeys by utilizing the existing 3D Eyes port-to-brain connection. Your thoughts will be relayed to the E-Monkeys, and their vision will be relayed back to you. In addition, your brain provides the necessary processing power for them to perform their complex cognitive skills. When you are away or do not have the disc inserted, they will go into a stasis and wait for your return. They depend on you, so give them all the love and attention you can. Disclaimer: this product is not approved for sale in California.
Tutorials. Clarissa lounged in her hammock, tablet propped against her knees, scrolling through videos. The algorithm had quickly learned that she was deeply interested in E-Monkeys content, and now her feed was full of creators who had gotten their kits earlier and were already experimenting. One channel stood out, Johnny Monkey Seeds. He had millions of followers and opened every video with a self-appointed confidence that suggested he believed himself the first true scholar of microaquatic simulated societies. "Welcome back, Seeds," he said in one clip. "Today, were teaching the monks farming. Clarissa watched as the small creatures, monks as he called them, arranged blue stones into neat grid-like patches for planting nano-nanas. The efficiency was immediately noticeable. The patterned plots allowed easier harvesting, less movement wasted. In another video, Johnny demonstrated how to encourage basic architecture. At first, the e-monkeys built small, uneven piles of stone shacks made of enthusiasm rather than planning. But with repeated guidance, they began selecting stones deliberately, placing longer pieces as beams across the top. The improvement was undeniable. Clarissa paused the video and stared at her ceiling. The e-monkeys were more than toys. They were learners. They adapted. She watched another tutorial, how to enable first-person view. With the disc connected, it was possible to see the world directly through a single e-monkey's perspective. Color, depth, motion, everything. Clarissa felt a thrill she hadn't expected. To observe a society from above was one thing. To step inside it, even briefly, was something else entirely. She closed her tablet, set it aside, and folded her hands over her stomach. Tomorrow, she would begin. Setting up. Clarissa approached the setup the way a biologist might approach a new culture experiment. Methodical, deliberate, every motion paced with intention. She filmed the process, but her narration was calm, almost clinical. The aquarium she had purchased was a simple 10-gallon rounded glass design. Nothing ornate, nothing distracting. A blank environment, one that would soon reveal its complexity. She placed it on her altar table, adjusting the position several times to ensure stability. No wobble, no tilt, no chance of external disruption. Next, she poured in the distilled water. The surface tension settled into a smooth, reflective plane. She waited a moment, simply observing. Then she added the E-stone substrate, watching the blue pieces scatter to the bottom in a shifting mosaic. The nano-nana seeds came next. They drifted downward like tiny, pale specks of pollen. Everything looked still, silent, dormant. She picked up the pouch of e-monkeys. Genesis, she murmured, not reverently, not dramatically, simply acknowledging the moment. The tiny creatures fell slowly through the water like grains of colored sand, their shapes indistinguishable except as movement waiting to begin. Clarissa set the empty pouch aside. She wiped her hands. She checked the water temperature. She checked the angle of her camera. She checked her posture. Finally, she picked up the disc. The rose gold surface caught the light in a sharp line. Initializing connection, she said quietly. She popped the disc into her 3D eyes port. A soft click. No dramatic flash. No auditory cue. No cinematic surge of electricity. Just a shift. Subtle. Internal. A sensation like the mind gently making room. Clarissa closed her eyes. She let the feed stabilize. Then the connection opened. Background. Until recently, Clarissa's life had been mostly unremarkable. A normal childhood, a normal family. Her parents divorced right after she went to college. She earned a biology degree at a state school, only to end up working part-time in retail like so many others. The rest of her income came from social media, which, fortunately, was beginning to take off. She had one sibling, an older sister, Stephanie, her opposite in almost every way. Where Clarissa favored solitude and shadows, Stephanie was bright, sociable, and perpetually surrounded by people. She hadn't worn black a day in her life. She had moved across the country years ago. They had only spoken a few times since. Clarissa used to have plenty of friends, but these days, she had few. She basically only had social media followers, and Lucas. Lucas was her boyfriend, technically. They didn't see each other often, sometimes going days without remembering to text. She felt guilty about that, in a distant kind of way. The way you might feel guilty about a plant you forgot to water but assume will be fine. She was so busy with work and her channels, and he was busy with his construction job and his band that they just kind of let time together fall by the wayside. She kept telling herself she would catch up on life one day and make time for the relationship, but so far it hadn't happened. In any case, her social media was exciting and fulfilling, so why not pursue it to its inevitable success? Relationship management can wait. She had amassed a decent following so far. It turns out people love dark topics. She took her love of esoterica and turned passion into profit. Thousands of hours of reading paid off now. She could quote Isis unveiled from memory, trace the evolution of the zodiac across civilizations, or break down Aleister Crowley's psychological profile and relate all of it to the major arcana of a standard weight deck. More importantly, she could condense those ideas into a format short enough for the average viewer's attention span. She knew who she was and wasn't ashamed of showing the world. Though her book smarts were remarkable and her psychic gifts impressive, her greatest source of pride was her collection of magical objects. She possessed a few standard items such as pentacles, wands, and amulets. However, it was her collection of oddities that she could talk about for hours. Clarissa owned a dowsing rod she purchased from an old man who swore by it. She also owned an unsealed witch bottle dating from the 18th century New England. This, she was sure, had kept the bad juju from troublemaking viewers from manifesting bad luck in her life. Finally, she owned an automaton, wooden fairies and gnomes posed in a tiny forest tableau. The mechanism was broken, but Clarissa was determined to repair it one day. Of all of her devices, she was most fascinated by this one as it represented life arising from inanimate objects. Perhaps it was that fascination, life emerging from lifelessness, that led her to be among the first to buy the E-Monkeys kit. Morgana. The transition resolved into motion, slow, drifting, rhythmic. Clarissa recognized immediately that she was not seeing through eyes as she knew them. The visual field was wide, borderless, without the hard edges of human binocular framing. Everything moved with a gentle sway, as though the world itself were suspended in a quiet current. Color was muted but distinct. Blues, greens, soft pinks, tones of stone and water rather than vegetation. Shapes were rounded, smooth, sculpted not by hands but by erosion and repetition. Movement entered the field. Small figures, no larger than grains of rice to Clarissa's understanding, but here scaled to full presence. They were not identical. Each had a distinct coloration, subtle patterns across their small forms, and most notably, a single ornament-like structure rising from the top of the head, an antenna tipped with a symbol. Geometric, simple yet unmistakably intentional. Morgana, the perspective Clarissa occupied, lifted her arms. Limbs felt light, buoyed. Each gesture left trails in the water, traces of motion lingering before dissolving. Other E-Monkeys turned. One, red in hue, bearing a pyramid symbol, stood at the center of a loosely formed group. The others were oriented toward her, not crowding, not worshiping, watching. The red one raised her hands. Slow, deliberate movements, a language of motion. Clarissa did not understand the meaning, but the structure was clear. The red one led. The others listened. Morgana responded, not with an emotional impulse, but with a sequence of gestures that mirrored acknowledgement. Clarissa observed each motion precisely, as though documenting animal behavior in a controlled setting. Hierarchy, communication, cooperative presence. Morgana stepped back. Others dispersed, some moving toward clusters of blue stones, some toward the floating seeds that were rooting into the substrate. Tasks were distributed. There was no visible conflict. This was not chaos, not instinct alone. It was the earliest stage of a functioning social unit. She let the feed fade and withdrew from the connection. When her eyes opened in her apartment again, her breathing was even, her posture unaltered. She reached for her notebook and wrote everything she could remember. A mini-world. Clarissa began logging observations the way an anthropologist might record field notes. Day 3. The E-Monkeys continued to arrange their environment. Not haphazardly, patterns emerged slowly, organically. What looked at first like random piles of substrate stones began to resolve into clusters, distinct areas of activity. Clarissa noted at least 3. A place for gathering food, a place for building, a place for rest. The distinction was not absolute. Boundaries were porous, but intent was visible. Day 5, roles began to appear, not assigned by Clarissa, not enforced, simply adopted. One figure, brown-toned, broad-backed for his scale, spent more time than others transporting stones. He moved with rhythm, repetition, and patience. Clarissa labeled him Rasputin. Another, orange, fast, took to racing across the terrain, tracing loops that resembled routes or testing paths. Clarissa named her Circe. A pair, one hunter green, one yellow, operated near the nana plants. Their gestures were synchronized and efficient. They tended the seeds, cleared debris, adjusted the mulch-like scatter of smaller stones. They were cultivators. Clarissa labeled them J.D. and Simon. Finally, there was Anton. He was a muted blue creature with a musical note on his head. He was observed bringing a large nana to Morgana, seemingly as a gift. In return, Morgana accepted the gift, nodded approvingly, and embraced her courting monk. As with all the names she chose, they had personal, esoteric significance. Her studies influenced even the names of the minute monks. Day 8. Structures took shape, slowly, carefully. Trial and correction evident in each placement. Stones were tested, rotated, replaced. Walls rose not by instinct, but by evaluation. Day 12. An emergent center of gravity formed around the red one, the one with the pyramid symbol. Clarissa labeled her Lilith. Lilith did not command. She did not coerce. She simply stood at the center of where decisions converged. Others approached her. Gestures passed between them. Short, economical sequences of movement. Information exchanged. Directions given. Clarissa watched the scene unfold in fascination. She documented the behavior in her notebook. Cooperation precedes hierarchy. Hierarchy emerges without force. Social structure forms at the pace of need. These were the same patterns seen in early hunter-gatherer societies, the same rhythms that shaped human prehistory. Clarissa closed the notebook. Not because she was finished, but because the realization was clear and did not need immediate words. They were building a world, slowly, deliberately, exactly as any living beings would.
Buy now. E-monkeys by 3D Eyes are all the rage. Now with the improvements you've been asking for. Higher video fidelity, more uploading capacity, ad removal, better translation of the E-monkey's unique language. Take control of your character. You have the power to choose their next moves. Order your kit now before they run out. Don't get left behind. Steven from St. Louis says, "It's the greatest product of all time." Ad removal with purchase of Plus tier or higher. Translation services are available with paid Glossolalia subscription only. Character control is available with paid possession subscription only. Disclaimer: always place E-monkey's environment on a safe, sturdy surface, free of reasonable possibility of damage. Visit our website for more information.
That guy. Clarissa was a busy woman, between her channels, her exploring, and, oh yeah, her job. Sometimes, however, she needed to attend to the boring things in life like groceries. Today was Saturday, and she had specifically set time aside for just that. She was strolling down the aisles of her local co-op, checking things off her list when she ran into an old friend. "Risa, how have you been?" Clarissa turned to see a guy in his late 20s, wearing blue flannel over a brown tee with ripped jeans and shabby chucks to complete the look. His dirty blonde hair was a mess, and his face looked like it hadn't been shaved, or even washed, in several days. It took a couple of seconds for Clarissa to recognize that he was the drummer in Lucas's band. "Oh, hey man, how's it going?" she responded while trying to recall his name. "It's been all right, I guess. How's Lucas?" he responded. Clarissa paused, confused by the question. He sees Lucas more than I do, after all, she thought. Before she could answer, the unshaven, unshowered drummer continued. "It's been weeks since I saw him. I figured when Dan left the band, we'd all keep it going and find a new guy to take his place." Clarissa considered this information. Had she been so busy she forgot? Surely she would remember something like this. Lucas would have told her. The drummer continued. "One musician alone is just one mind. But when we played together, it was like we made a new thing. Something that wasn't any one of us. Without Dan and Lucas, that thing doesn't exist anymore. It's just me hitting drums." "Lucas is good," she answered the original question, ignoring the stoner philosophizing. Then she added unnecessarily, "We're good. Everything is good." She took a moment to think about what she said, then quickly moved off the topic. "I'm sure you'll get it together. The band, I mean. You'll find some new bandmates and be jamming again before you know it. I'll go to one of your shows." That last part was doubtful, partly because she didn't even remember the guy's name and partly because she was too busy these days to go to hear live music. "Thanks, Risa. Well, I need to get this hummus to the house. Let Lucas know I asked about him and I'm ready to jam whenever he is." "Will do, man. Have a good one." The two went their separate ways. Clarissa rolled the conversation around in her head a bit. Should she text Lucas and ask about this? What if he had in fact told her and she really did forget? It's not out of the question, as scatterbrained as she was lately. Maybe she should pay him a visit. Not tonight, though. She was busy with her little monks. She would find the time to check in on Lucas later. Of art and babies. Clarissa eased herself back into the hammock, the disc already seated in her port. Her eyes closed, but her awareness opened into the water world. She was not guiding anyone now. No influence, just watching. Morgana walked along one of the stone pathways, and Clarissa saw through her eyes small figures moving with purpose. Some were gathered near the fields, tending nano-nanas in neat rows that seemed thoughtful, intentional. Work done because it was understood, not commanded. But it was the newcomers that drew attention today. J.D., who had shown a nurturing calm since the early days, carried 3 tiny hatchlings in his arms. He fed them softened fruit, gently, with patience that looked instinctive. Clarissa noted the efficiency of it, how care, once rare, had now become a role. Nearby, Rasputin chipped away at a stone. The tapping was slow and deliberate, not random, not mechanical. Clarissa zoomed in mentally, observing the process. Rasputin tested each piece first, selecting one with the right firmness. Then came the forming, edges carved to shape, surfaces smoothed. The finished piece was not just a block, it was a figure, a simple one, yes, shaped loosely like a standing e-monkey, but unmistakably symbolic. A representation of someone. Clarissa recorded everything. The sculptures were being traded. 1 nano-nana bundle here, 2 there. Exchanged like objects with value. Rasputin's skill had market presence, and Lilith, ever observant, had placed one of the statues near her home. If society was developing in stages, they were passing through one now. Clarissa felt a quiet sense of satisfaction. She was witnessing successful progress in a system, patterns forming, roles emerging, culture budding, development unfolding at a pace that made sense. A small civilization, not just surviving, but becoming. The magnitude of her observations and the resulting philosophical ponderings began to make Clarissa's brain hurt. Or maybe the headache was from too much time working on the videos. In any case, she needed to wrap things up for the night. She looked around for her phone and found it in the kitchen. She paid so little attention to the real world that she didn't even remember putting it there hours before. She checked it and found that Lucas had called while she was in the game. I hope it wasn't important, she thought to herself, hoping she could justify not calling him back. She decided to compromise and texted him instead. Hey babe, sorry, I've been really busy with one of my videos. My head is killing me. I need to go to sleep. Let's catch up tomorrow. Kiss. Bad dreams. That night, Clarissa tossed and turned, trapped in a series of bad dreams. She dreamed of people in a foreign land wearing togas of assorted colors. They were busy going about their day in a market buying and selling goods. There were giant statues of their empress along the streets of the vendors. Suddenly, darkness descended upon the scene. The people ran for their lives as everything went black. She dreamed this 3 times that night with slight variations on each occasion. Finally, before the sun had risen, and way earlier than she was used to waking, she rolled out of bed and began her day. There was no point trying to find peaceful sleep when her mind wasn't cooperating. It would be a rough day, but she would have to get through it. Thriving and multiplying. The count was now 44. 25 originals and 19 second-generation e-monkeys lived in the world atop Clarissa's altar. Many of the kids were already adults with their own roles and relationships. Some of the originals would likely be grandparents soon. She wondered how many the aquarium could realistically support. The tank was twice the recommended size for a 50-count kit, but would there come a point where the space simply felt crowded? Clarissa promised herself to be attentive. If anything needed rearranging, she would intervene. It felt like the responsible thing to do, given her godlike position. They seemed so real, living, thinking beings, sentient even. Or was it only her brain doing the thinking for them? The port and the disk provided the processing power. Yet, her intuition said there was something more there, something with a soul. They deserved to be nurtured. Clarissa finally purchased the possession subscription. This allowed her to control Morgana rather than passively watch. As Morgana, she guided others to work more efficiently. She introduced grid pattern farming for the nano-nanas, much better than the random piles they had used before. Harvesting became easier. Movement became cleaner. Next, she showed them how to use cylindrical stones as rollers to transport larger boulders from the far edges of their world. Soon, sturdy buildings and larger statues began to take shape. Everything was going beautifully, until a certain red e-monkey with a pyramid-tipped antenna noticed. Morgana was mid-instruction when she froze, paralyzed. Clarissa tapped her port, assuming a glitch, but her viewpoint rotated slowly and intentionally. Lilith stood before her, Simon beside her, his hands swirling. As they swirled, they generated a telekinetic restraint that held Morgana in place and moved her at Simon's will. Clarissa tried to break free. Nothing. She could log out and re-enter as Simon. She could overpower everything. But she didn't. She waited. Lilith lifted her arms and spoke, the HUD translating in real time. There was no praise, no appreciation for her help. Instead, Lilith only offered a reprimand. Morgana had overstepped. She had changed the order of things without permission. Lilith threatened her with hard labor, breaking boulders, a reminder of her place, of the hierarchy. Then her gestures softened. She offered leniency, on the condition that Morgana bring future ideas to her first. Simon released the hold. Morgana bowed, humbled, and returned home, where Anton was waiting for her with outstretched arms. Clarissa logged out. She sat back, wondering whether Morgana felt any of that. The official documentation insisted the e-monkeys remained unaware during possession, that they believed every thought and motion to be their own. Clarissa wasn't convinced. She wasn't sure 3D Eyes was either. Later in bed, she reflected on the confrontation. At first, it disturbed her, but the more she thought about it, the more familiar it seemed. Power, ego, territory, social order. Nothing the e-monkeys were doing was different from humans. And considering these creatures were powered by the electrical patterns of a human brain, her brain, it made sense. Somewhere inside her mind, there was a Lilith, and the world in the tank was beginning to reveal just how human it truly was. Something is off. Hey everyone. In my previous videos, you've seen some of the art these little guys have created. Rasputin has made sculptures that would honestly make Michelangelo pause, and his daughter, Medea, her mosaics are unreal. Lilith's palace wouldn't look half as grand without them. Clarissa clicked through a slideshow, tiny hands shaping, arranging, building, each piece more intricate than the last. With 86 citizens now, we've seen so many new specialists emerge. Dancers, builders, stone rollers, athletes, even what I think might be building inspectors. She laughed softly, letting the images play, movement, rhythm, industry, life. The slideshow shifted. Now there was picture of a figure lying still on a street, then farmers moving at half speed. Finally, groups gathered, but interacting was minimal. Clarissa's voice returned, quieter. But lately, something's been off. They're not as energetic as they were, and it's not just the older ones. Even the new arrivals seem tired, less curious, less playful. She let that hang for a moment before continuing. I thought maybe they were crowded. That would make sense. But the babies wouldn't know that. They'd just live, you know? Full speed, the way kids do, but they're not. She appeared on screen again, looking directly at the camera. I don't know what's happening. My intuition is telling me something's wrong and I need to pay attention. If any of you have thoughts, I'd really like to hear them. More bad dreams. That night, Clarissa had more bad dreams. This time she was soaring across a desert like an eagle when she noticed a giant statue. It was like a moai, but with the desert sand color of the Sphinx. She flew down to take a closer look. When she was close enough to see its features, she found its expression was angry. Startled, she fell from the air, landing hard on the ground. She looked up at it once more and found its expression had changed. It presented the saddest, most hopeless expression she had ever seen. The intensity of the suffering in its eyes was like nothing she could imagine. Then, it spoke in one voice composed of many. The serpent slithers across the cold, damp ground. It swallows the rat. It consumes another, then another. It lives long and knows of no other taste than the rodent. The heel of Adam is its greatest friend. Suddenly, the statue crumbled into 1,000,000 pieces, and she woke up. Klutz. Hi, everybody. Clarissa's voice was thin, her eyes already rimmed red. In our last episode, we were trying to figure out whether something was going on with the e-monkeys and, if so, what the problem was. She swallowed, looked away from the camera. Well, I have some really bad news. She took a long breath, bracing herself. I made the biggest mistake I think I've ever made. Complete carelessness, stupidity. Her voice broke. She tried again. I don't know how it happened, but I knocked the aquarium off the altar. The whole thing shattered. And I killed over 100 of my little friends. The recording cut out. When it returned, her expression was flat, the kind of numb that only comes after crying too long. Feel free to call me an idiot in the comments. I honestly deserve it. They depended on me, and I failed them. She closed her eyes for a moment. I don't know if there's an afterlife for e-monkeys, but if there is, I hope they're free. I hope they're happy. I'm going to take a break for a while. I'll come back when I'm ready. Maybe I'll do readings again. I need time. Until then, be true and keep seeking. After uploading, Clarissa sat on the floor in front of the empty altar. The room was spotless now. No glass, no water, no traces of the world that had lived there, just too much space. Her gaze drifted to her phone, to Lucas's contact, hovering. He would care, even if he didn't understand. And yet, she couldn't bring herself to press call. Vulnerability felt like failure. She wrapped her arms around her knees and stayed there, silent, deciding she would handle it alone. A new beginning. A week had passed, and Clarissa thought she was doing better. The nightmares had stopped at least, and she had a plan now. Plans helped. If the best cure for losing a pet was getting another, then she would simply start again. Only better this time. Bigger tank, better setup, better care. A utopia. She drove to the pet store and bought the largest aquarium she could realistically justify. She wrapped it in an old hoodie in the hatchback, securing it like something fragile and sacred. She wasn't going to make another mistake. Not this time. On the way out, she treated herself to frozen yogurt, cookies, and cream, a small celebration of forward momentum. She sat in her car to eat it, feeling almost normal, when she noticed a faded blue truck across the street with familiar band stickers plastered on the back glass. Lucas's truck. What's he doing at the community college? He hates school. She called him. It rang and went to voicemail. She hung up before the tone. A flicker of something passed through her. Guilt, maybe. But she smoothed it away. I'll ask him later. She started the car. There was a new world to build. Take 2. 2 weeks passed. Clarissa kept her promise to herself. No hovering, no adjusting, no interference. The new aquarium glowed on the altar like a shrine. She didn't record it, didn't post about it. This world would grow in silence until it felt safe to be seen. The community thrived. More than 100 citizens now, each with roles and quirks and relationships. There was even a new Lilith, though this one was gray with a star-shaped crest. Clarissa took it as a good sign, a gentler sign. But then, just like before, somewhere around the 100 mark, something shifted. The songs of their work became slower. The art grew darker. Movements dulled, faces dimmed. She tried to explain it away. Fatigue, seasonal rhythm, coincidence. But the feeling was familiar. Too familiar. And the nightmares returned with them. Listen, Each night, Clarissa dreamed of people in crisis. The dreams echoed her earlier nightmares but grew sharper and more vivid. Suffering, hopelessness, darkness, and death. She saw a man chained in a cave, his wrists rubbed raw. She saw a witch hanging limp from the branch of a dead oak, her hair caught in the wind like tattered cloth. These visions came in waves, one after another, until Clarissa woke drenched in sweat, her heart pounding, unable to fall back asleep. She believed in the power of dreams. She always had. She'd helped others decipher their nighttime messages. Why should her own be any different? So, what were these trying to tell her? She decided to take the question to tarot. Clarissa retrieved her most prized Rider-Waite deck, an old, well-worn one she reserved only for moments that truly mattered. She held it between her palms, breathed deeply, and repeated her secret mantra 13 times. Then she set the deck on the table and began to shuffle, slow and deliberate, focusing her intention until the rest of the room seemed to fade away. Finally, she drew a single card. The 8 of Swords, upright. 8 swords driven into the earth. A woman, blindfolded and bound, standing trapped among them. Clarissa stared at the image. A pressure tightened beneath her ribs. This is not good. Careful. The next morning, Clarissa was sipping her spinach and date smoothie when she noticed a smudge on the aquarium glass. She had promised herself she wouldn't get near the new world. Not yet. But what harm could one gentle wipe do? She would be careful this time. Very careful. She set the smoothie down and took a slow breath. Then she approached like she was handling nitroglycerin. She would not trip. She would not stumble. She would not become the destroyer of worlds. Not again. And of course, that is exactly what happened. Her foot caught on nothing at all, just carpet, just air, just fate, and she pitched forward. Her hand hit the side of the aquarium. The glass lurched. The world toppled. The crash was deafening in the quiet morning. In seconds, the utopia was gone. Research. Clarissa couldn't sleep. Not tonight. Not after destroying a world of innocent creatures for the second time. One accident was tragic but explainable. 2? 2 meant something was wrong. Was the universe mocking her? She pushed the blankets aside and sat up against her pillows. Her mind raced. There had to be a cause, some force, some interference, some foul magic. So she lit her sage and smudged every room, repeating a mantra with slow, deliberate breath. May this be a space of love, peace, and safety. The last word caught in her throat. Safety. For whom? When she finished, the apartment felt clean, but her mind didn't. She sat at her table, staring into nothing, replaying memories. The dreams, the dull-eyed e-monkeys, the slow collapse of joy into despair. It all lined up, the nightmares, the emotional shift, the destruction. But why? She needed clarity. She needed caffeine. She retrieved her favorite mug with the words, "Sorry for having great tits and correct opinions," printed on the sides. She filled it with matcha and sipped while she searched the internet. The results hit fast. Far too many owners had accidentally destroyed their e-monkeys. Post after post described embarrassment, confusion. "I'm never clumsy. I swear I just slipped. I don't know what happened." She dug deeper, scrolling backward through timelines, finding older posts. And there it was. Complaints of lethargic e-monkeys, darkening art, a sense of gloom. And every time, it happened when the count hit around 100. She wrote it all down, hand moving faster than thought. The only piece missing, did 3D eyes know? So she searched. Articles, press releases. Nothing about disasters. Only praise for innovation and profit, such as 3D Eyes has created the most groundbreaking product in recent memory. 3D Eyes is the company to invest in now. Robbie Sauls, founder of 3D Eyes, is the genius of the century. Then she read a disclaimer in one of the new ads. Always place e-monkey's environment on a safe, sturdy surface free of reasonable possibility of damage. Clarissa froze. "That's new," she whispered. The adrenaline returned. She clicked the website's help page and began to dig deeper.
Always cover your butt. Responsible e-monkeys ownership, a guide. last updated September 23rd. Thank you for your interest in eMonkeys by 3D Eyes. Our product owners are among the most responsible in the world. We value their contribution to the health and safety of the eMonkeys community. There may be times when user error endangers the eMonkeys in their care. Accidents happen. To help prevent this, 3D Eyes has put together a list of useful tips to ensure your eMonkeys experience exceeds expectations and your eMonkeys are happy and healthy for a long time. Always be mindful of your surroundings when tending to the eMonkeys environment. Never care for your eMonkeys under the influence of drugs or alcohol. Always be mindful of tripping hazards near your eMonkeys environment. Minors must be accompanied by a responsible adult at all times when engaged in any activity in or around the eMonkeys environment. Always be patient when tending to the eMonkeys environment. Never be in a rush. Take your time. Remove distractions from around the eMonkeys environment. Avoid third-party ports or disks. These can endanger not only the eMonkeys, but the user's health and safety. Avoid overpopulation of the eMonkeys community. As always, reach out to our safety department with any questions. Happy caretaking does not include all possible risks and behaviors that may contribute to damage to any eMonkeys products, including but not limited to eMonkeys Sieve kits, their contents, 3D Eyes ports, or experience discs. Please consult the relevant owner's manuals for more details on proper care and handling. Use of these products is at your own risk.
Lucas. Clarissa stretched and reached for her phone. A missed call, a text. Hey, sweetie, if we're free later, let's grab lunch. Her head throbbed. Caffeine, no sleep, too many tabs open in her brain. She dropped the phone onto her pillow, stared at the ceiling, then forced herself to reply, Sure, babe. Tell me where. I can meet at 1. Lucas was sitting at a table sipping a Mountain Dew when Clarissa arrived. He hadn't seen her yet, so she stopped and watched him. He was looking around casually, but not impatiently. She liked that about him. He was a chill person. If she was late, and often she was very late, he was cool about it. Nothing seemed to bother him. He didn't carry around the anxiety of 10 people like she did. He was pleasing on the eyes as well, taller than average, but not so tall that he had to bend way down to kiss her. He was the perfect height to complement her own tallness. He had a manliness about him, a roughness to his look that concealed a softness inside, a gentleness only she had access to. He was a good guy, a damn good bassist, a hard worker, an intelligent man who was humble about the things he knew. He wasn't into tech like her, or magical arts. In fact, the two of them shared little in common other than music and mysterious chemistry. Thinking about these things made her feel a tinge of sadness, guilt. The universe had blessed her with one of the good ones, and she took it for granted. She watched him some more. The server came and topped off his drink. He thanked her with genuine friendliness. This made Clarissa feel that much worse about everything. She started to roll a tangle of thoughts around in her head when she was suddenly interrupted. Rissa! Lucas had spotted her. He motioned for her to come over as he stood up. She waved back and headed in his direction. Hey, babe, she said before giving him a kiss. His whiskers tickled her lips. She loved that feeling. He pulled out her chair and she took a seat. Once the food was ordered, they began catching up. Clarissa told him all about her eMonkeys, the good and the bad. Lucas listened intently, though he barely understood the technical details. Still, he understood the emotion, particularly of losing them, as he had lost pets in the past. She then caught him up on her investigation from the night before. She spoke with such enthusiasm as she gave him a rundown of everything she had discovered. Lucas was gripped by the story, so much so that he almost forgot to catch her up on his own life. And the reason for the lunch. Realizing she had taken all the time talking about herself, Clarissa finally asked him how he was. I'm good, Rissa. I'm pretty good, was his reply. There was a sparkle in his eyes as he said this. He continued, You know, my job sucks. It's hot and sweaty work, and half the crew just doesn't bother to show up most days. Clarissa nodded, remembering many of their conversations. Also, as you know, Dan left the band. Clarissa was relieved to get confirmation on this, but disappointed in herself for not remembering before. Yes, I remember, she lied. Well, I guess that was the end of things as far as the band goes. Jimmy and I haven't really looked for a replacement, and well, Jimmy would rather stay stoned all day than get serious with the music anyway. So, that's his name, she thought to herself. Lucas continued. So, we haven't played since. Dan, though, is doing all right. It was a good move for him. He changed up his sound. I'm happy for him. That's good to hear, Clarissa added. So, what's next for you? Your job any better? Are you going to find some new people to jam with? Clarissa was proud of herself for paying attention and showing real interest in Lucas. Or anyone, really. Well, that's what I wanted to talk to you about, Lucas answered. Clarissa leaned in, genuinely interested in what he had to say. Well, like I said, my job freaking sucks, and music is my passion, so I decided to pursue music as a career. Clarissa took a moment to process what he said, then asked, You mean like putting more effort into starting a band? Nope. Well, yes, I want to continue playing music my whole life, but as a career. So I decided to go to school. I signed up for classes to first get me up to speed on my basic skills. Clarissa's mouth dropped. Lucas hated school. This was a real 180-degree turn. Wow, really? You're not putting me on? She responded. I know, right? Well, I've been taking these classes this semester. I didn't want to say anything just in case it didn't work out. And you know what? You're going to tell me you're enjoying it? Clarissa answered with a smirk. Actually, yes, Lucas answered. I mean, it's just math and English, but it's pretty cool to learn what I was too distracted to care about when I was in high school. More importantly, I'm taking a music theory course and it's blowing my mind. Clarissa had never heard him speak so passionately about anything. She couldn't help but smile. The look in his eyes as he told her things he had picked up so far in class made her well up inside with joy. I'm so happy for you, hun, she exclaimed with authentic joy. There may have even been a tinge of deep love in her voice if she allowed it to shine through. Thanks, babe, he responded. Here's the thing, though. There's a program at a community college I'm interested in transferring into. It's music production. Sound mixing, recording, designing audio for venues, stuff like that. Go for it, Clarissa blurted out excitedly. It's in Clayton County, though, babe. I would have to move, Lucas responded. Clarissa considered what this meant. She wouldn't get to see him very often. They would have to call and text and maybe see each other on weekends. Then she realized they already don't see each other very often due to her own busyness. And she rarely returned his calls or texts as it was. A feeling of deep regret filled her. Like before when she was watching him, but far more intense. Was she holding him back? She was freaking holding him back. A lot of emotion flooded her brain at once. Everything she normally pushed out, having no time or desire for. She got lightheaded. Rissa, are you okay? Lucas asked, snapping her back to reality. Oh, I don't have to go. I can find something different around here, Lucas said, preemptively conceding. Clarissa's head swayed as she swam through her thoughts and emotions. After a long moment of internal struggle, everything aligned. She knew what she had to do. Absolutely not, she spoke with firmness. Lucas straightened up to listen. You going into this program is the best idea I've heard in ages. The way you talked about your classes. The way you light up when playing music. This is the perfect fit for you. Lucas looked relieved. Clarissa continued. I hold you back, babe. You deserve better. You've always deserved better. Rissa. Lucas began to speak, but she cut him off. Let me finish. You're a good man. A damn good man. Pure of heart. And sexy, too. I'm a shitty girlfriend. I never have time for you. I'm always wrapped up in my own stuff. In fact, I didn't even remember that you had told me about your band breaking up. Jimmy told me when I happened to run into him the other day. That's how useless I am in this relationship. I want you to go to Clayton County and kick that program's ass. I know you have it in you. Get that degree, land the job. Mix music for the biggest acts in the industry. I believe in you more than you can ever know, and I'm just sorry I haven't been the support structure you needed all this time. Clarissa paused. Lucas was silent. I will never be the kind of woman you need, she continued. I don't think I'll ever be available, and I'll rarely have the mental bandwidth to truly listen and care as much as you need. Clarissa cut Lucas off again. I never truly realized any of this until now. So, I guess what I'm saying is, she pondered her next words carefully, then continued. I guess what I'm saying is this, go pursue your dreams. You will find more happiness than you can imagine. You will find someone, when you're ready, that will be there for you completely. I will be fine. I have my pursuits. As cliche as it sounds, we will always be friends. You can call me anytime. On the drive home, Clarissa felt peace for the first time in ages. She knew that letting go of Lucas was the right thing. The relationship held him back, and it held her back. Their talk came at the right time. She was on the verge of something big, something important. She could not afford the time needed to keep up a relationship, not now. It wasn't fair to him anyway. She thanked the universe for the time she had had with Lucas. She expressed gratitude that he had found a new path, one that aligned with his nature and purpose. Then she put it all out of her mind and began thinking about her own new path. She had a video to produce. It would take every minute of her available time to see it through. Putting the pieces together. Day and night, Clarissa researched. She dug up every scrap of information she could find on e-monkeys, 3DIs, and even Robbie Sauls. The picture was forming, but a few pieces still refused to lock in. Why did the collapse always happen when the population reached around 100? Was there some programmed failsafe? A processing limit? Something in the port? She turned every theory over, but none of them fit. One night, exhausted, she finally stepped away. She dimmed the lights, lit a few candles, and let music fill the room. A song she hadn't heard in years came on. In Agata da Vida, 17 minutes of heavy, hypnotic classic rock mastery. She imagined the drummer playing alone at first, steady and controlled, and then the moment when the rest of the band joined in, each layer adding to something bigger than any one musician could create alone. A sound that felt alive. And then it hit her, Jimmy, that conversation in the co-op aisle. One musician alone is just one mind, he had said. But when we played together, it was like we made a new thing, something that wasn't any one of us. Emergence, something greater than the sum of its parts. Clarissa paused the music. If a band could become more than individuals, if ant colonies could create architecture and social systems far beyond the capacity of a single ant, what happened when the e-monkeys crossed a certain population threshold? What if their little minds were combining into something singular? But if that were true, why did the collapse always follow? Ants thrive in colonies. The e-monkeys withered. She thought of the tarot, the 8 of Swords. Awareness is confinement, a consciousness trapped in its own understanding. A rodent doesn't comprehend human heartbreak or consumer ethics. Its world is food, shelter, mating. But humans do understand, and with that awareness sometimes comes suffering. So, what if, when the e-monkeys reached that critical number, their collective mind became aware enough to understand its situation? And that situation was a prison. Clarissa's nightmares rose up behind her eyes. The statue speaking with many voices. The serpent eating and eating, never knowing anything else, begging for the heel that would finally put an end to it. She poured tea to steady herself and opened a video app, just needing noise. The first video was of a cheetah in a zoo enclosure, fed well, clean, safe, yet devastated. Its eyes held the knowledge of a life it could not live. A predator built to run, forced to pace the same ground forever. It knew there was something else out there it wanted. Open space. It knew it was trapped and powerless to get it. Clarissa set her phone down. Of course, the meta-monkey, the emergent mind formed from all the e-monkeys, knew. It understood that it was trapped in a glass bowl, dependent on a human brain to think. It could grow aware, even intelligent, but never free. It was a caged animal, a cheetah that could not run. A sorrow swelled in Clarissa's chest, deep, aching empathy. She now understood what the dreams had tried to tell her, and what she had to do. 3-piece band. Clarissa looked at her screen. 3 news articles were displayed side by side. On their own, each was unremarkable, just noise in the endless churn of information. But together, they formed a pattern. A story emerged, one that no one seemed to be telling yet. Record profits. The first article reported record-breaking earnings, 3D Eyes was selling more eMonkeys kits than analysts had forecast. Exponentially more, in fact. That wasn't surprising. The product had gone viral. What was surprising was the mention of repeat buyers. Why would someone who already owned a kit need another? And another after that? Yes, the creatures reproduced. Yes, the system supported growth. So why were so many people returning to buy second and third kits? Clarissa already knew the answer. They weren't buying more because they wanted more creatures. They were buying more because they had lost the first ones. Just like she had. An interview. The second article was from years ago, before billionaire founder Robbie Sauls had become a household name. Back then, he was just a young MIT grad laid off from the collapse of Neuralink. The interview had nearly faded into obscurity, but someone had archived it, and now it mattered. Robbie spoke with the bright-eyed confidence of a visionary. He said, "Everyone is focusing on the brain-to-computer interface, but the real breakthrough will be computer-to-brain. Imagine influencing thoughts directly, subconsciously, without the user even realizing where the ideas come from. The potential for self-improvement is endless. The only limit is our imagination." At the time, it sounded like sci-fi bravado. Now it sounded like a confession. A death. The third story was darker. A former mid-level researcher at 3D Eyes, Laura Tolbert, had died shortly after being fired. Official cause of death: suicide. Official reason for dismissal: failure to follow internal protocols. But the people who knew her didn't believe that. Clarissa accessed the posts Laura had made before her death, posts that had since been wiped. They were frantic, yes, but coherent. Purposeful, desperate. Laura wrote about souls, even artificial ones. She shared articles about lab monkeys subjected to neurological experimentation. She posted memes depicting Robbie as a supervillain. And her final message? He knows. Not only does he know, he's proud of it. Clarissa stared at the words for a long time, feeling a cold heaviness settle into her chest. Laura had seen something, and no one had listened. Clarissa realized with a jolt that she recognized the expression in Laura's writing, the mixture of guilt, urgency, and powerlessness. It was the same thing she'd felt when she stood staring at the shattered glass and lifeless stillness of her own eMonkey's world. Laura hadn't just lost research subjects. She had lost lives, just like Clarissa had. And Clarissa would not let this story end the same way. She closed her laptop slowly. The pattern was real. The implications were enormous. And if she was right, then other people already knew, and were staying silent. Clarissa exhaled, steady, deliberate. She would need confirmation. She would need allies. She would need proof airtight enough to survive denials, lawyers, and smear campaigns. But above all, she would need to be brave in a way Laura hadn't been allowed to be. Clarissa reached for her phone. It was time to start making calls. An expose. It was October 12th. Clarissa sat at her desk, lit only by the glow of her monitor. On her main channel, she had just over 1 million followers. By this time tomorrow, that number would be vastly different, though she had no way of knowing just how different. The video was finished. Weeks of careful research, weeks of editing, weeks of making sure every line, every claim, every implication could withstand scrutiny. Nothing could be dismissed as speculation. Nothing could be removed under community guidelines. She had spoken to experts. She had archived sources. She had even interviewed Laura's mother and brother, their voices trembling but resolute. Her cursor hovered over the upload button. For a moment, she heard only her own breath. Then she clicked. Sweet music. Clarissa lay on her couch, staring up at the ceiling in the quiet of her apartment. What a day. 2 podcasts in Austin, CNN in Atlanta the day before. She was suddenly someone people listened to, the kind of person those same hosts would have scrolled past a year ago without a second thought. She wasn't celebrating. Not exactly. Taking down 3D Eyes felt like justice. Yes, but justice was heavy. Behind every headline were hundreds of employees who had done nothing wrong. Behind every debate show panel were the tiny lives that had lived and suffered in a glass world she had loved too late. She let herself feel all of it: relief, grief, pride, and something like mourning. Then she heard it. A soft tick, then another. She sat up. From across the room came a faint whirring, a rising shimmer of gears. Clarissa walked to her cabinet of curiosities and opened the drawer. The automaton was moving, coming to life. She lifted it with both hands and carried it to the altar. One by one, the figures awakened, fairies spinning, gnomes swaying as the platform slowly turned. Finally, the wizard raised his arms, and a melody spilled forth. Delicate, layered, impossibly intricate, a harmony greater than the sum of its tiny parts. Emergence, but this time, it was beautiful. Warmth bloomed in her chest. She carried the automaton with her to bed, set it gently beside her, and lay down. She closed her eyes. Clarissa slept peacefully for the first time in a long, long time.